This is the Educational Triage Podcast. Welcome. We invite you to come along with us on an exploration of interviews, issues, and other exciting and relevant topics in education, especially alternative education. They say alternative education is a laboratory for mainstream education. Why? Well, join us every week and listen in as Christy Goodell,
Hello,
Philip Summers,
Aloha.
and I, Tony Hunt, jump in feet first to discuss issues that may affect our classes, students, communities, as well as our teaching. Please subscribe if you enjoy and find relevance in what you experience here. And if you haven't left a quick review, please do. We appreciate your candor and insights so we can improve as we move forward. Now, let's see what's on board today. And welcome back to Educational Triage. I'm Tony, and I am joined this evening, or today, with Philip Summers.
Aloha.
Hey, Philip. Christy couldn't make it today, but we have been on a bit of a break, as some of you may have noticed. And the reason for that was because I had a medical event on the last day of July, and I have been home now for approximately 3 weeks. And today was my last day of physical therapy, and I still have more that I need to go through. But everything looks like it's in the clear, and my health is returning.
So you're starting a rodeo soon.
Yeah. Well, I felt, oh, you have no idea. I felt like I'd been in a rodeo.
Yeah, I bet you did, yeah.
I still have aches and pains from the 30th. But yeah. So if my voice sounds different, I know that in last week's podcast, my intro and my intro and my epilogue voice are much weaker. And that had something to do with an intubation tube going down my throat and for several days. Anyway, and it was non-COVID related. So
It was not at a rodeo.
no, I was not in a rodeo. No. Anyway, so on to real life and back to real life. This week, we thought it would be really good to start exploring at the beginning of the year, and welcome back to all those teachers who made it back this year. Hopefully you are well rested and you're able to take deep breaths and know that you have probably fewer than 173 days of work left until the next summer break. And those are work days.
You get those countdown calendars started out now.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, so we thought that we would do a survival kind of thing, and what kinds of because in alternative ed we're able to do a lot more, and we're a little bit more flexible. And so, what are some of the skills that students should leave school with? And this could even work for a regular school. And these are things that maybe you're going to do seminars with. Maybe you do a Friday seminar or Friday learning. There was one program I was with, and if you had perfect attendance and if your grades were up and you were passing everything, you got to take Monday off. And Monday was a half day. And you came in at about 11 o'clock on Monday. You got your lunch, and then you had some classes where you, or maybe, I'm trying to remember. No, you came in at 9 o'clock and you were there until lunch. And then you got your lunch and then you could leave. And the rest of the day was just for teachers and meetings and everything like that. But what we did was we did basic skills and we did some classes of interest. So we worked on remedial things like telling time. We worked on how to use a ruler and do measurements. And for some of you who think that's pretty lame, those are basic skills that a lot of students don't have, and things that a lot of us take for granted. But there were also some other things that they could do, and they could sign up for those. And some kids would take the same ones over and over again just to hone up on their skills, and it really did help them. So these are not quite that. Um, we're not going to say how to read a digital or analog clock, because if they can't read a digital clock, then I think we're into some other kinds of issues. But maybe not. Maybe I'm in the wrong. But let's start looking at some things that students really should need to know that will help them out throughout their lives. And so, Philip, what would be the first one on your list that you came up with, that
Well,
you believe that students should be able to?
note taking.
Note
Note taking.
taking,
Yes,
note
note taking.
note taking.
Yes,
So,
it's more than one seminar in an afternoon. But yeah, I worked with the kids a lot to get them to write just correct notes, just organized notes in their own way.
so how do you do that? I mean, what's the most? I have my own methods
Yeah.
of having kids take notes, but I'm just going to go with yours. What is the best way that you think, or what is your method for teaching kids how to take notes?
Well, first thing I do is I make it an overall skill kind of thing in the class. So if we're learning something, who cares? Shakespeare, U.S. history doesn't matter. We talk about a certain topic, and then I say, okay, now we're going to take notes on this, and then I'll walk them through how those notes go. And I'll kind of organize my notes on the board the way I do things, and what I want to see in your notes. And then I let them kind of see. I see what they first come up with, and then I know what I've got to work with. But yeah, it's generally not a skill a lot of kids have. Um,
No, because
they
a lot
just
of them want
don't,
to write down every word that you say.
or they don't want to write down hardly anything.
Hmm.
And that's even worse. It's like, wow, you just didn't get anything written, so that's just your memory. That's not going to work. Yeah.
Yeah, what I've found helps me is if it's written on the board, I prep myself by writing those things down on my paper. And then when the instructor begins to speak, I start listening for those, and then I just fly through. I have my own abbreviations,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I remember somebody came to me and they said, "I can't read your abbreviations," and I said, "That's okay," and they said, "No, I need to know what." Oh, it was in my class notes because I had my administrator saying, I need you to write these out completely. And I said, I don't have time for that. I already wrote them. They said, you have too many abbreviations in here that I don't know. And I said, it's not for you. It's
Yeah.
for me to refer to work with the kids. So just know, and I can read them out to you. And they
They're
said, no, I
yours.
want you to write them out. And I said, I don't have time for that. Um,
Yeah, that's
but,
why I don't put the kids through that either. I give them, we get a lot of the organizational skills up
mhm,
front, and then I see what they do with it. And then I work with the kid because I don't want to make them do it my way. There's certain ways you do it, certain ways you don't. Unless I have to really install a structure onto the kid, I kind of
mhm,
let them find it on their own. Like they get to
right.
invent it. Yeah. So, and then I'll look at it and say, I'll actually have them turn in their notes, say on Thursday. And then by
Mhm,
Friday, we'll come back and we'll go look at notes. I'll say, okay, I noticed some of you had this, some of you didn't have that, that
mhm,
sort of thing. And we go through, it usually get pretty good results.
mhm,
They're college ready.
mhm,
I think they're college ready. And that's always been my standard. What kind of kid can walk into a community college classroom, a 101 class and start doing it? Can they do that? Are they going
right.
to go, oh
Or,
my God? Or are they going to get in there? And I don't want them to be able to get in there.
right. Or even if it's a labor skills class, because they're going to have to refer to those later on anyway.
Yeah, even if
Might
it's trade. Yeah.
Right, right, exactly.
So the
Um,
college ready is pretty much universal that way. So once you get that high school diploma and you're college ready, you can go into vocational, you can go anywhere you want, but you can go to college too. So it all works.
mhm. Yeah, well, I always write my stuff out in abbreviations,
Mm.
and when I'm finished, then I take it home or I go to a cafe or something,
Mm-hmm.
and then I handwrite it out or I type it out.
Ah.
And so
Oh,
I type everything out. So I leave parts I leave out the short words, so it's in kind of a shorthand
yeah, yeah.
because I'm going so quickly and I'm trying to get everything. But that also reinforces it. So now I've written it out so that I can follow it. And
Ah,
then the
okay.
next day I can go over it
Uh,
and I can start highlighting it because I'll print those pages out.
I would just do it. I do it by hand, and I
Hmm.
tell my students they have to do it by hand, unless
Hmm.
their handwriting's atrocious. But it's only because I think that if they do it, take original notes on keyboard, it they can actually kind of go kind of unconscious by typing skills and get that stuff
Right.
all out there, and they don't really hear it. They just get it dictated to them. And so what I want them to do is write it out, and that causes them to shorthand it in a way, like you were talking about.
Right. And it uses a different part of
Yeah,
the brain.
it certainly does. Yeah. And not all the kids have that skill. And I don't want them getting too many notes.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I was pretty good at organization. They actually paid me to take notes and give to special education.
Oh,
So when I was in
wow.
college, yeah, I got like I think it was like $2 a page. And I just go to the class and I go down and write my notes
Nice.
and hand it to my classmate. Yeah. Because she could read it.
Nice.
And I used a little medical notation like complains of or I can't
Hmm.
remember, but I had some certain medical notations from being a paramedic. But otherwise, it was just kind of straightforward, but not formal sentences. Never,
Hmm.
this is a point, that's a point, done, done. You know. And sometimes I would put diagrams in, and if it was written, I'd tend to say, okay, that's written on the board. That's what the prof wants me to get, so I'll get that first.
Yeah, there was somebody, well, there wasn't somebody, there were some people who were paid to take notes in some of the bigger and more popular classes on our campus at University
Uh,
of Washington. So you could go to the student, well, you could go to in the student union building, you could go up and you could ask for the class notes, and you tell them
yeah.
specifically which class, and they would hand them to you, and it would cost you maybe a buck 50, something like that. But this is back in the
Uh,
wagon train days.
yeah, this
Um,
was, yeah, I know what you're talking about. This is before the
yeah,
full computer takeover of all of education.
but there was something that was really lacking, and it was really hard to work with those notes because you would have to get around to reading them, and then you would have to put everything together. It's not the same thing.
Now, I
So,
just gave my notes to this one classmate, and
mhm.
they paid me to do it. I can't recall how it got arranged. I think she goes, "You take good notes," and I went, "Oh, thanks." And she went, "Can I have them?" kind of thing. And she said they want me to have someone do these, and I can read yours, and they'll pay you. And I went, "Pay me? I'll take any kind of money I can."
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. We're going to move on to the next one, and this one's mine. And I'm going to say how to change a tire.
Oh, whoa, that's really important. Yeah, you're right on that.
How do we teach? I mean, that's a survival skill, definitely. I mean, everybody should be able to change a tire.
Yeah, if they want to be in charge of their destiny.
Well, in a sense, because your cell phone's not always going to work, you're not always going to
Right.
have
Correct.
reception.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night on a lone, scary, dark road, um,
Yeah.
you're going to have to figure that part out.
Yeah,
So
that's a good skill to have. There's a
it
lot of people
really,
that have not an idea.
it really is. And I'll tell you, even if you call somebody to do it for you, it could cost you a couple of $100
Mhm.
unless you have AAA or unless, or if, unless you have some other car companies now, they have their own thing like Kia Hyundai has it for 5 years where somebody will come out and they will do automatic roadside assist. Some of the other companies might do it, but you have to pay an extra fee for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then after that 5 years, and most of our students drive used cars.
Good point.
So,
Yeah, that's
you
that
know,
skill you want in your 20s. I went through those lean years.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yikes.
you've got to be able to do it. I remember back in the 80s, I was visiting friends and some yank had put they had put bottles down right next to the curb, and I didn't see them. And I was living in San Francisco, and I was trying to park in downtown San Francisco,
Mm.
and I did not see those bottles right there. So I drove right into them, and it just completely slashed my tire. And it was a very dark night, pouring rain. And so I backed my car out to get it away from the glass, turned on my flashers, and changed my tire and drove home. And I was just soaking wet, but I had my
You were
tire changed.
home. You weren't
I
sitting
was
in a
home.
car wondering what you were going to do about it.
Right. And there were no cell phones back then.
I recall there was an age, kids, back then. There you weren't always those cell phones. We are the
Exactly.
generation that we started out with no computers. Card
Yes,
catalogs in the library, people. Card
that's
catalog.
right. I loved card catalogs. They were so much easier for me.
I was at
Um,
the university and I went to my grad program at a smaller college and they hadn't installed a computer system. So I went looking for it. She said, no, we have card catalog. I'm like, wow, this is interesting.
okay. Number three, yours.
Geez. Well, I like to teach the kids how to take a break
What do
and
you mean by that?
prioritize things. Well, sometimes, as you're aware, some of our students get a little bit emotional. Actually, a lot of emotional, and there are
Hmm.
breakdowns, and there
Hmm.
are what we as adults have learned to not do in public. They are
Hmm.
not able to curb from doing in public, and so we'll see these meltdowns. Kids under intense pressure to perform, or
Right.
in any kid, even in a family problem, or even a girlfriend, boyfriend.
Right.
Anyway, to teach them how to just kind of deal with that, to sort of bring it
Separate.
down, separate it down, bring it down, prioritize. Okay, what is it really you're experiencing? What is that deadline? A lot of times it was academic. I didn't really want to get involved in any relationships, but it was like,
Right.
okay, what does the teacher want from you? And how fast can you do the three most important things? That sort of thing. And let's just talk about how maybe we can handle this. As how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And
Hmm.
teach the kids, okay, let's just reduce this to one thing after another.
Okay.
Give
So
them
you're
that
talking,
skill too.
so in some ways, you're talking about chunking.
Well, I'm talking about just managing your psyche.
Right.
I used to use a lot of kind of meditative techniques. I would have like when things got really hairy, I would have the class like we'd sort of stop short of the end of the period, and then we'd
Hmm.
go outside and we'd sort of this is really interesting. We'd like sometimes look at patches of grass and see what we could find. I mean, just meditate looking at like a square foot of grass, things like that. Just calm them down and get them to focus on the here and now. And then we go back in and do it again. That sort of thing.
So modeling experiences in order
Yeah,
to get them
how
there.
do we do this? I mean, it's not easy. And
Right.
so these kids sort of buckle under the pressure. And I've learned that the older I get, the more responsibility I gain,
Hmm.
that the more pressure I feel, and I have to do these things in order not to crack.
Right.
And to go, hey, whoa, the problem's been worked like so hard here that I need to let it go down, set it down over here, and go do something, and not think about it and go back to it. That sort of strategy thing. Just teach
Yeah.
kids how to be a person because that's after all what they're learning to be with
Hmm.
these deadlines and classes and responsibility. We're teaching how to be people. So how
Right.
do we people do this? And so I kind of, yeah, I install it into the classroom. That's what I loved about Alt Ed. We weren't on a push for curriculum so much as quality curriculum. And
Right.
so, yeah, there's a lot to be learned.
It's taking a step back in order to make a giant leap forward.
Yeah, it's a real good procedure. If you got a problem and you can't get any further with it, set it aside.
Hmm.
And
Perfect.
that's hard to do.
Okay. The next one, my turn. How to read a contract.
You think, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I agree. I just can't see where they put that outside of a special class, but that's important. You're right. It's getting more and more important.
Well, I think that it's important for students, and it's also important for parents,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
one of the, you know, as a side note, for years I was trying to get an evening program for parents who were non-native speakers to come in, and we would have them in maybe two or three different rooms depending on their skill levels or whatever, and we would teach them how to read and look at a contract and start teaching them English on these levels. And I was working with a couple of administrators how to get them to do the contracts, how to do basic things, and then they could move up. But this way, people weren't taking advantage of them, but they also were more, they they were better prepared to meet their landlords or whomever head on, so that they could understand what was going on, or at least acknowledge and understand and use the resources that they needed in order to pursue whatever it was. So if they're renting an apartment, if they're renting a car, if they're um, renting a house, if they are going to be whatever they're going to be doing, so
Yeah.
that they're not taken advantage of. So somebody doesn't sit there and say, haha, I'll get them.
That used to be part of
Um,
a class we took. Remember personal finance
oh,
in
that's coming up.
high
I've got
school?
that one on my list too.
Oh yeah, it was a whole class of that,
Yeah,
and you had to do things like a contract.
right.
You had to calculate how much it would cost to have a child. That was fun because
Right. But
no one
that's
should ever have
that's
one.
that's not what I'm talking about right now.
I
So what
know.
I'm
I know.
thinking is, if you gave them contracts, if you put them in groups and you gave them a contract, and you say how many of you would sign this contract, and if they say that they will sign that contract, and every group has a different one, so you might have contract A, B, C, or D, and then you know whether or not they actually read and understood that contract, and then you could break it down for them.
Yeah.
So there might be a good contract in there, and there might be some real nasty contracts in there that where they say, "Yeah, this contract looks good. We signed it." And you say, "Wow, wow, wow," because you'll be paying for that for years to come.
Yeah, I signed that. Oh yeah, you did. Yeah.
So, yeah. And so, we don't want them to be blithely and blindly going out into the ether thinking that everything's going to be on their side, so that they are better armed.
That's a good point. Got to beat them up just a touch.
Well,
Soften
yeah,
them.
make them more aware, so
That's
that,
true. Yeah.
and make them a little more leery, and maybe actually read some of the terms and conditions on their internet
Ugh, God, yeah.
apps that they have, because those are being changed all the time. So okay. So your next one.
My next one is how to travel from one place to another on a multi-day trip. How to drive one, how to fly it, um, yeah, how to get there by train, how to
Okay.
get yourself in an economical way somewhere a far distance away.
Okay. So plane, train, and automobile, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Okay.
a
So
skill that they don't really know, and so yeah, you
so
go
how would you
inside.
so how would you break that down?
Oh, we talked about planes, so let's say where we're going to go. Oh, I want to go to New York City. I want to see a Broadway play. Okay,
Okay.
let's look up flights to New York City
Hmm.
from Portland. Fortunately, you have an international airport, so you can go almost anywhere here. How much is that? At what time of day? What are the conditions on that flight?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's real cheap, but did you notice there's like three stops and it takes you 17 hours to get across the nation? It's an adventure. It's a cheap adventure, but it's an adventure. That's
And you have to pay $75 for your bag,
yeah, that
and you
sort
have
of
to
thing
bring your
too.
own snack.
That's the thing too. You tell them we have to talk about that. Unless you want to pay gazillions of dollars, just taking on snacks in the
Hmm.
backpack. That's it. Airports, they're food deserts on purpose. They're going to sell you
Right.
that high price stuff the way they want to sell it to you. and then the train station. So who travels by train? Do we have a train? Yeah, we do. At least in Portland, we have one. It goes north and south and west.
Yeah.
No,
So
it
how
goes
would you?
east, not west.
Yeah. So how would you travel from here to Orlando to get to Disney World?
Yeah, or how about Seattle for a football game on the train? That's the kind of thing too. And then, or my brother and my sister-in-law went to Chicago on the train. They swear by
Oh, neat.
it. It
How
costs
long
about
did
as
that?
much as a plane. It's like
Yeah.
3 days. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
they have a cat.
Did you did you have an econo car? Did you have, or
I
did you just
didn't.
go
They do it.
coach?
I didn't go.
Oh,
I've never gone any further than Seattle on the train.
oh, did they just
But
stay in
they,
coach, or did
yeah,
they?
no, they got a compartment
Yeah,
and slept a
I
couple of nights.
I did that once when I went down to San Francisco,
Yeah,
and
that's a
it was
long trip.
actually it was well, San Francisco was an overnight trip, so
Mm.
there's a bed in there. You got your meals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like being on a plane at the time because you could just look at the steward and say, "Can I have some wine?" He'd bring you a small bottle of wine for you to pour in your glass, and
Look out
you
there.
know,
Do you have a window in your cabin?
oh yeah,
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
oh yeah, and
Train that, how do you get there by car? Because they have a lot of them have an idea about, I'll just get a car and go somewhere. It's like, okay.
yeah, well, some of them just do that, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't work real well sometimes. These cars break down, like you were speaking of. Yeah, they
Oh,
suck down gas. So just talk about life skill stuff.
oh yeah, definitely. That's a great one. My next one was personal finance
Yeah.
that you
Which
brought
part?
up. Well,
Which part? Yeah.
I think just budgeting and saving and planning and just
Hmm.
understanding the value of what you're doing. So, what are you getting if you let's say that you get a job at, well, let's just make up a store at Cashmart, and you bring home maybe $400 a week. What are you doing with that money? Are you going to put that money towards something, or are you going to just keep buying things that you want to buy?
Yeah.
Or what are you doing? So, are you going to invest some of it? I had one student who started working when she was 16. She was working in childcare, and she bought the things that she thought that she needed, but she also started putting $200 a month towards retirement
Wow.
at 16. So you know that she's going to be very well prepared. And when I saw her a few years later, she said, "Oh yeah, now it's increased." So she's putting even more money in there, and she's continuing with that. And I am just so impressed with her. And but it was because she took a personal finance class when
Mm.
she was 16, and she thought that makes a whole lot of sense. And so there's money there that she cannot. That's Autumn in the background, if anybody wanted to
Yeah.
know. um, the diva. Um, but yeah, just understanding the value of the money that you have, what you can do with it, and how it can work for you, rather than you working so hard just to get little things. And then when you're faced with a crisis, do you have an emergency fund? How do credit cards work?
Oh, yes.
How do
Uh,
um, in taxes, and how do you save up to make sure that you constantly have enough money, um, all of that. And not even talking about banking, but and not even talking about investing. You can throw that out there, but I think investing might be another class that you look at. But as well as, I think banking, maybe you want to talk about banking. How do you set up a bank account? Where do you set up a bank account? What are the rules around that? And I didn't realize this, but a, our students need to be 18 in order to open up their own bank account now.
18, really?
That's my understanding.
Mm.
I thought that they could open up a bank account when they were younger, because I opened my first bank account when I was like 8.
Yeah, me too. I was a kid.
And everybody looked at me and they said, "Well, your parents co-signed." I said, "My parents never co-signed for me on a bank account. That was my bank account." It wasn't had nothing to do with them. They had no access to any of it.
Same
So
here, as I recall. You
and
know.
so I don't know when things changed or why they changed.
Hmm.
But maybe it had something to do with a lot of kids kiting checks or something like that and not understanding, and this would help because they couldn't really go after the kids for the monies.
No, I guess
And
right. Yeah, it's true.
maybe that's what it was, something like that. I don't know.
Huh.
But anyway, so but I think personal finance is something because they'll learn how to write checks and take care of all of that. Credit cards, what's a good deal on a credit card? Why do you need a credit card? Because credit
Mhm.
cards get a lot of people in a whole lot of trouble.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And then you go for these people that want to loan money so that you can wipe out your credit card debt. I have a friend who was constantly remortgaging his house to pay off his credit card debt
Oh wow.
until he could not do it anymore. And he said, I need to borrow money from somebody. I said, dude, nobody's going to want to loan you any money. You're kind of maxed out all the way.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I don't know how I get into this thing. And I said, because you give yourself a false sense of security and you just can't stop spending. You got to quit spending on things that you really don't need. So he's doing fine now, but for a while it's almost like a gambling addiction.
Yeah, it's almost that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
The kids are really
Okay.
prone to it.
So next one for you.
What's the next step after high school? I like to work with the kids on that. So
Future
um,
planning.
yeah, what happens? And I'm not talking about. I really don't like it when the they try to pin kids down to careers at such an early age. I just think
Yeah.
that's just not. I just don't see that working. But what I do see is telling them, okay, here's the deal. Here's how college works: 4 year versus 2 years community college, and then 4 years. And then what's graduate school? And then you talk about vocational school. So what's a vocational program look like?
Hmm.
I've done that too as a paramedic. So I took classes at community college, and those applied to the tests I took, and then you know, I passed them and became a paramedic. That's vocational training.
All right.
Um, and then some kids they want to work with their hands. So okay, what's that look like? Where can you get that? Can you get an apprenticeship? Things like that, and just kind of give them an idea of what's after high
Hmm.
school, because the high school seems like a finish line or something, and it's just very much the beginning. you know,
Well,
It's-
senior slump, my understanding of senior slump, it happens because it's terrifying because you've been coddled for 12, 13 years
no, that wasn't me, so I don't relate to it.
or longer. And, and well, you have this system, you have these institutions that have taken care of you
Well, yeah,
this
but I
whole
used to
time.
go
You
out there.
know what to expect. You
Yeah,
know that that's there. And then all of a sudden, you're graduated and they say, it's kind of like Wile E. Coyote walking off the cliff and then realizing, oh, there's nothing below me. And then looks down, has that look of shock, and then his body goes and his face
yeah,
his neck gets really long and then snaps back to his body and he goes down. But yeah, so having an idea of what it is that they want to do, and rather than spending tons of money on college, um, trying to figure that part out.
yeah. There's a lot of high schoolers that go and major in partying, and by the
Hmm.
semester, they're like back home. I've seen that so many times.
Oh, I had friends who did that.
It's just let's go to the big university, and then they go to the big university. It's like, oh, no one's in charge of anything. I can just drink and have fun and
Hmm.
do all my and maybe not go to class, and then their parents go, well, you screwed that up. Coming home now, and or they just go home.
Yeah.
That's like, and then they end up doing something because they didn't know really what they wanted to do. That's what I try to pin the kids down to as well.
Hmm.
I ask the kids, sometimes when they say, well, I'm going to college. I'll say, okay, what for? Why are you going to college? What's the goal? What's the objective there? And if I
Yeah.
get this, well, I don't know. It's like, ooh, we need to talk. Let's not just go spending money like crazy on all that.
Yeah.
But I would say that when you go to college, don't mess around with it. First
Hmm.
time you take that writing 121 class and you get a C, that C is forever. So don't get a C.
Yeah.
Be
Because
ready.
right, as one student told me when he was coming in on his freshman year, I said, "Why do you want to work with me?" And he said, "Because I need to do well in school." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because this is high school, man. High school is real life."
Good for him. He
And
was
I said,
ready, man. Yeah.
"Okay." And then I worked with him, and what I didn't realize, because he was working really hard to get really good grades, what I didn't realize was that if he got anything below a B or a B plus, his dad would beat the living daylights out of him.
Ooh, ooh, I hated that.
So he kept that pretty well hidden. He said, "Well, I kept throwing you hints." And I said, "They were really awful hints." I said I wasn't sure what to make of them. And that's why I probed and you kind of backed off. But anyway, neither here nor
Mhm.
there. Um
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure to put on these kids. I really feel
yeah.
for them. We
And
took
then
my
when they
my son
yeah,
out to dinner when he got his first B in the eighth grade. I said, "Good, now it's off. You got straight A's up until now. You got a B. We're taking him out to dinner. The pressure's off." I knew
my
so many kids just melted under the pressure of having that four.
oh, see, my parents, it was a competition between my brother and me.
Mm.
And what it was whoever got the highest grades for that quarter got to choose the restaurant, and they take us out to dinner.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, because it was more for him than well, actually, it was for me too, because I was a huge procrastinator. I didn't like doing homework. I really didn't. And my brother really, he didn't really like school at all, and they were trying to get him back in there, and they figured they'd bring in the sibling rivalry and try to get that gone. Um, the one big thing now that we're talking about future planning, I wanted to talk to the kids about loans.
Well, we talk about that too. What's it take to go to school?
Yeah,
The FAF forms,
the FAFSA.
the FAFSA. Yeah.
FAFSA is in there for me. Talking about the loans, um, and now that we have the loan forgiveness program going in, it was just published and it didn't make the national media. I was really kind of surprised that if you here in Oregon, if you get that $10,000 loan forgiveness, that's taxable income.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I knew
So
that.
that adds another. I think I read $1,100 of taxable income. That's what it would cost you. That's how much in taxes it's going to cost you.
Oh, geez.
And so it's nothing is for free. And
Uh,
when you take out the loan, you got to think about what are the long-term consequences. You can't think, okay, well, it's only going to be this much money. Well, you're going to also have to pay rent. You're also going to have maybe a car payment, or you're going to have some kind of a transportation fee, whether or not that's a bus pass, a train pass, or
yeah,
some commuter kind of fee. Parking, you're going to have to pay for parking unless your company is going to pay for the parking. There are so many different things that you're going to have to pay for. Plus, you're going to need your entertainment. You're going to need food. You're going to need to pay for gas, water, heat, whatever. Um, there's so many things that are in there, and all that gets rolled up into personal finance. But taking out the loans, that's a tough one. And so, like we talked about with should students go to college, it's getting so much more expensive. And now universities, they figure that they're going to start raising the rates because it's a complete scam. And so if you can afford that, that's fine.
yeah.
But it's I think that people need to walk in there with their eyes wide open. But FAFSA, I like the fact that you talked about FAFSA because that is one of the biggies.
It is. It's a big one. It's intimidating too.
Actually, no, I think most of my students, we gave them an elective credit for finishing it because it's such an integral part of.
Cool.
getting into their community college, being able to go to their vocational school, going to university, and just getting that financial aid and starting the ball rolling for them to be able to get work study, for them to be able to get any kind of financial aid, for
Right.
them to get those grants and those scholarships. So that is extremely, extremely important. And I think that might be something that starting in October, that would be something that teachers will want to really push to their kids and have them doing. What about cooking?
Oh, I was thinking about that. There was a class in middle school that they offered us called Bachelor Skills. I remember that. It was rather sexist, actually. But yeah, if you, well, how do you take care of yourself? And I learned to cook eggs. Hey.
Well, there you
But
go.
it was a good time. Yeah. At that time, they had like food, and we would cook food and eat it.
Hmm.
And it was a quarter class, and I remember I learned a lot about. I learned not to leave the handle of the pan out, over the stove top so that a kid could pull it over on them and things like that.
Hmm.
Because I was a kid, I didn't know anything, so they taught us a lot of good stuff.
Excellent. But no, I
Yeah,
think cooking, because you can't live off of ramen for the rest of your life or just boiling water for oats.
yeah, that's just or microwaving everything.
Well, microwaving everything implies that you're buying it pre-made and pre-packaged, which means that it's not going to be that healthy, and it's also going to be a whole lot more expensive,
Oh yeah, but it's a whole
you
lot more
know.
convenient if you don't cook.
Yeah,
Uh,
unless you're
so if
doing
you teach
pizza
somebody to
rolls.
cook, yeah, it teaches kids. The eggs were fun. I can't remember. It's been a long time. Gosh, I was like maybe, God, I was maybe 11 or 12. So. No, no, no. I was 12 or 13, maybe
I
14.
Well, I remember as a starving college student making spaghetti with ketchup.
Yep. Well,
Yeah,
my
that
favorite top ramen, I just put vegetables in it. I was a single dad, and my kids were going, "Oh man!" I go, "No, it's good." They go, "Yeah, it's everything, all the time, all the time." I
potato
can't.
pancakes.
It was bad. I wasn't
We used
that
to have
bad, but
we used to have potato pancakes growing up.
that was
I
good. I
remember
remember
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Another one that kids are constantly calling me about is doing their taxes.
Uh, that's a personal finance class. We in our class we had to do taxes.
Yeah.
1040 easy or 1040.
Hmm. Yeah. But still, there's kids that don't take that, and they need to know how to get their taxes done. You're
Yeah, they
right.
do. Yeah.
What? Okay. What about renting?
Yeah.
Be it a house, a car, or a skidoo, or whatever the water, the jet skis,
Yeah, jet skis. Skidoos.
or even
That's dating,
skis,
yeah.
but just renting. How do you rent things? I mean, what do you need in order to rent something? So, and that gets an entanglement because you have to have a credit card, you have to have your insurance,
Yeah.
and you cannot use a debit card.
Ah,
And if you do use a debit card,
that makes
it's
sense.
uninsured. So if you use a Visa,
That's true.
MasterCard, you know that you're insured. But
Important to know.
with a debit card, they will suck all the money out that whatever that property is worth
Yeah.
if you wreck it or something else happens. And you also
Oh,
have to have your proof of insurance.
yeah. Sounds like we got that personal finance class to do.
Yeah, it's going to be a loaded class, but luckily it's a semester class, so there's a lot to do. But I also had in there buying a car, buying a house.
Oh, I don't know about buying the house, but
Oh, you
hmm,
know what? Here's what I've learned lately.
hmm,
Um, Buying a house, to me, I used to think my poor kids, they'll never be able to buy a house. Well, one of my former students, his dad does some work for me, and his dad came up to me and he said, "You want to know what? My son is doing so well." And his son did not go to trade school. His son did not go to college. His son went right to work for the same company that the father works for,
hmm.
and it's a landscaping service. And the kid worked his butt off and he rose through management and he did really, really well. And he and his girlfriend, they have two kids. And the next thing I know, the dad looks at me and says, "My son and his girlfriend just bought a house." I said, "You're kidding." And they bought a nice house. They're doing really, really well. And he left the landscaping and now he's working for another corporation, but he's doing very, very well. He's only about 23.
Wow, that happened quick.
Yeah, it did. And then I'm down at the park, down at the dog park, and I bump into one of my former students. And I said, "Hey." And she said, "Hey." I said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Oh, I live right around the corner." I said, "What about your brother?" Because I taught her brother. And she said, "Oh yeah, he's there with his girlfriend." And I said, "Okay, and your mom and dad?" She said, "Oh yeah." And then I turned around and here comes her brother skateboarding down the path. I looked at him and I said, "Hey." And he goes, "Whoa." And so we talked, and his girlfriend turned out to be a former student of mine that was in the same class as he was.
Huh.
And I had also taught her brother. And so we had a great chat. Well, I said, "So you're living around the corner?" And he said, "Yeah, she and I," meaning his girlfriend, "we bought it." I said, "What do you mean you bought it?" He said, "Well, my parents were trying to buy the house, but something went wrong with their documentation or whatever." And so he said, "So because that fell through, she and I made the offer on the house and we bought it." I said, "You have that kind of money to do it?" And he said, "Yeah, we saved our money and we put it all together and we were able to do it."
Wow.
And no, neither one of them went to college. Neither one of them went to trade school. And they both have decent jobs. They just knew how to save money and consolidate their resources. So buying a house is not out of the scope of experiences. It really depends on, do they buy it in the greatest neighborhood? No, not necessarily. It's not a bad neighborhood either. Is it like a McMansion? No, but it's big enough for them to have their own space, his sister to have her own space, their parents to have their own space, and there's another sibling there. They all have their own spaces. It's a big enough house.
Yeah.
It's on a big enough piece of property, and they're all there, and they're all living, and they're very happy. And they are, oh, what's the word? They are they're doing very well. So I don't think we should take away buying a house from our students. I think we should have them look forward to that and being able to figure part of that
Oh,
out.
I wouldn't say that they take it away from them. I just wouldn't. I'm not sure if it's a big enough skill or if it's a appropriate skill to teach kids in high school, just because it's kind of far off. I think, or I just think it just they're a little young for that. I mean, maybe the basics of how a house is bought, but
Well, get the
yeah,
basics in there as far as what they need to do and how it works.
right,
And that way when they start looking at it and then they can just adapt the information to whatever it is, I think.
yeah,
And yeah, it may seem a lofty goal, but lofty goals is what gets people doing things, yes?
very true. Set your expectations high.
Hmm. I also have writing a resume
Oh yeah, that always gets done.
and
Yeah, you know,
interviewing.
resume. Yep.
Doing an interview, resume, writing a good solid resume and having an interview. And so we always had mock interviews. So before a student could graduate, they have to do an exit packet, which has an exit survey, but it also has them writing out a resume, and it's for a job that they could get at that time. So if somebody wanted to be a nurse, they can't go for a nursing job. They can go for a job doing something maybe for in the hospital or working as a nurse's aide, something like that, and then they can put that in there, and then they can interview for it, and they get to pick their own interviewer, and they're scored. And we've had kids fail their interviews 3-4 times, but they still have to get it, and they cannot graduate until that is done successfully.
Wow.
So, and sometimes they have to fix their resume. So it really gives them an impetus to take care of things that they need. So when they leave, they have the skills and they have tools under their belt. And that's what we really want our students to have, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because we were able to do that. I taught a research paper course,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking, would I teach that now? And I thought, well, I don't know if I'd be able to in a regular high school curriculum to
Mm-hmm.
teach that much, to take that much time for the research paper. But at the time for alternative ed, we had the freedom. Yes. And I would say absolutely. It's very worthwhile. And I'm just grateful that we had that. I don't think that can happen anymore. I don't think that alternative educators, at least in the place I came from, could say, listen, I'm doing a 1/4 seminar on this research paper. I
Well,
think
it
they
really
have a certain
depends.
curriculum to cover.
Right.
And I
I
think
think,
that's too much time, they'd say. If it's too much of a focus on a research paper, more needs to be covered. And I would, and
right.
whereas I was never questioned before, I think I might be questioned now.
Well, that's because maybe the wrong people are in charge of alternative education.
Well, that would be that would be what I would indicate to be the problem. Because I felt I was a pretty darn good alternative educator, actually
Mm-hmm.
a pretty good educator. And I'm grateful that I had the ratio, teacher to student ratios, and the time and the kids and the support to do what I did.
Oh, yeah, you and I both had a fantastic administrator.
We really did. We did. We were very, very lucky. I did not know how lucky we were.
Mm-hmm. And then I left, and then um, I no longer had her. And then you changed positions, and then you ended up with, I'll just say, a wolf in sheep's clothing, even though the sheep's clothing was really poorly manufactured. And you ended up with a couple of new administrators who really had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah, very
So,
true. Yeah.
which, and so this amount of support was lacking from everything that people have told me. So,
Well,
and
that's what
that,
eventually went to come to be is that the support just disappeared.
yeah. So,
Mm.
but anyway, did you have anything more on your list?
Not offhand, but
Oh,
get me
okay.
going. Let's have another cup of coffee, and I can probably pick out 2 or 3 more for sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we could fill
Yeah. I
a
mean,
jar with different things that we would want in
that's
there.
what I'm saying about it. When we were in alternative ed, we had the freedom, the support to do that stuff. To go, hey, I
Mm-hmm.
think, like in my case, I want to do a research paper course about just 1/4 all seniors research, and they said, go for it.
Right.
Yeah, you do that, and
Well, research writing is an important skill.
Oh yeah, they did really good papers. I mean, such good papers that I would love to know how they'd stand up in writing 121 at college
Mm-hmm.
because I had them doing it just like I was taught it. It wasn't quite the same standard. I didn't beat them up quite as bad as my college prof beat me up, but it was hard stuff, and they felt like they ran a gauntlet when they were through it, and that was the point. You earned your diploma, kid. You
Yeah.
really did. You did college level work. I used to tell them that you're doing college level work. Look me in the eyes. You can do it. I've given you the tools. You can write anything now. You beat us your way through an entire curriculum. But they got to do that for them. They got to know. Hopefully, I was trying to teach them how to think logically too. For God's sake, it's just been lacking in certain places lately. That don't make no sense when some people will be like, what? Did you say something?
Well, I think we're going to wrap up for today. And so we will be back next week with more energy and another topic that will carry us through.
Another one.
Another one. So, Philip, thank you for showing up.
Thank you, Tony.
And
Pleasure.
it's been great. This has been fun this week. Thank
Tomorrow's
you.
the first anniversary. First time.
Is it really?
Is it?
Oh, wow.
I
Well,
don't know.
happy anniversary, honey.
Ooh, happy anniversary.
Okay, so with that, thank you all for listening, and we will see you again next week. And remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment, give us a review. And until next week, adios.
Aloha.